I'm tired, options are few. I'm trying to pray, but where are you? I'm all churched out, hurt and abused. I can't fake what's left.
Today, talk a little bit about when we make our plans and we do different things in our life, we need to always know that God has the power to turn anything around that you do. He can overturn anything that you do. No matter what plans we set aside, no matter what we have in our heart, God still has the power to overrule your plans and your thoughts because He is still in control, and we need to know that. And a lot of times we think from this worldly wisdom and things that we get in our life, we think that we know so much and we think we have it all set out, this is how it's going to be done. But unless you give it to God and you give Him total control of it, He can turn things around. And may not turn it around the way you want it to be turned around because He's in control. We have to know that He's in control of everything, the good and the bad. God is in control. But anyways, I have this story in the book of Daniel that I want to read, and then I want to talk a little bit about it. And it kind of explains His own self, but it just lets you know how God can overturn things when we're not doing what we should do, or we get too high-minded, or we start exalting our own self, or we think we have it all together, or we think we can do it all by ourselves. Sometimes we think we just have it in control, and it's like, I got this. I don't need help from nobody. I don't need no one to help me do this, or I'm going to do it my way. And sometimes God's telling us to do it another way, or He's trying to bless us. And that happens a lot of times too, when God touches us or blesses us or gives us some wisdom that we can get ahead, and then we think we have it all under control, and we think, I'm going to do it this way. And then God gets no glory out of what we're doing. Well, God can get in the midst of what you're doing. You can be sitting on top of a hill and God can bring you down. It doesn't matter how high you go up, realize that God's still above you and He can bring you back down. So I want to read this story. I'm going to read it out of the Living Word, but you can look it up yourself. I was reading it back and forth out of King James, and I always read out of King James, but I think you can understand it a little bit more out of here. But when you have time, you might want to read it your own self out of the King James. But it's in the book of Daniel, starting at chapter 4, and only because it's so long that I'm reading it from here. Chapter 4, and we're going to start at verse 4. And it's really a story, so listen to it as a story, and I think you'll get more understanding out of it. One of the things I found is in reading the Bible, and I've read through the Bible from the beginning to end probably about 2 or 3 times, but they're stories. When you really get into it, the whole Bible is stories. You know, I think sometimes we put more into it than we should. We should really, when we read the Bible, we should say, Lord, let me have an understanding of exactly what you're saying. But anyways, the book of Daniel, chapter 4, starting at verse 4, and where it says, I, Nebuchadnezzar. One of the things we need to realize, Nebuchadnezzar was a king, and he was the one that put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. He was the one that threw them in there to be burned. But he also was the one that seen how powerful God was, and that God pulled them out of that. So Nebuchadnezzar, he was a king that disbelieved in God, but then he saw His power and how he knew that God was a true living God, because he saw, after he threw them in the fire, he saw how God saved them and took them out. So he wasn't just somebody going by what people said. He saw for himself just how powerful God was. But then he started getting a haughty spirit, a spirit of that, you know, he was all that. And that happens a lot of times too. A lot of times when God shows us things or tells us things, or we lay hands on somebody and they're healed, or we know a little bit more than somebody else, we start to think we're all that. That's why I said we can never exalt ourselves. We always have to stay humble, because anything that we have or anything we know is only through the grace of God. We never can be big-headed or think, you know, I got this. You know, we always need to know that. But with him, like I said, he was a king that didn't believe. Then he started to believe. And then God blessed him so much that he started to really exalt himself. And because of that, God came to him, and I'm just kind of going over a little bit so you can kind of get understanding of when I read it. God came to him in a dream, and he let him know what he was going to do. He let him know, because you actually are basically getting big-headed and you're thinking this, you have all this because of you. I'm going to let you know you only have this because of me. And I'm going to take it all from you for 7 years. Even though you have everything, you have more than anybody here, and you're so blessed, I'm going to take all of this from you for 7 years, and you're going to know that you are where you are because of me. And he was able to take it all from him because he was able to take his mind from him. He actually lost his mind for 7 years. That's why I said when you wake up in the morning and you got a sound mind, you give God praise, because you only have a sound mind because of God. Just like you wake up with a sound mind, he gave it to you. You could wake up one morning, he can take it from you. All good things come from him. That's why you give him praise for the things that you have. You don't take what we have for granted. With him, he started to take some things for granted, so he let him know, you are what you are because of me. And he gave it to him in a dream. So some dreams, God can speak to you in dream, because he says the word changes not. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if you read different stories in the Bible, he came to different people in dreams, and the dreams meant things. So sometimes, and I know at times we've all had different dreams that we knew they were words from God. Some dreams are far-fetched, but sometimes God speaks to you in dreams, and he tells you different things. And when he was telling him that, now he gave him examples of different things. And that's why sometimes we got to see, be close enough to God to be able to speak, to hear what he's saying and how he's saying it to, because he didn't tell him exactly how it was going to be done. He needed an interpreter, which was Daniel, that came in and actually interpreted the dream to let him know what it meant. But he done that different time. He done that back when we look back in David, when he came to David and was upset with David because David took that man's wife was Bathsheba. But he came to him, and he came to him by examples too. And then Nathan, the interpreter, had to come to him and let him know this is what he means. So sometimes he comes to us, straightforward and said this is what he wants. But sometimes he kind of beats around the bush. But if you're close enough to God, you will know when he's speaking to you, if you're close enough to him. But anyways, this is the story about that Nebuchadnezzar, the king, who had it all. And then he got, big-headed, and God said, I'm going to take it from you for 7 years. You're going to know when it's all said and done, it's me. The wonderful thing about this, and with him, was that even though he got big-headed, and when God showed him that it was him and that he was going to take it from him from 7 years, he allowed him to get his wealth back, and he allowed him to get back in the same position that he was at. Basically, God just wanted him to know, you need to put your trust in me, you need to look to me, and you need to let people know that it's me and not you. Some situations where we've seen in the Bible, God took things from people, like Saul. He took it from Saul, and Saul never got it back. Saul ended up losing everything. But because Nebuchadnezzar, opened up his eyes and realized that it was God and put God back in the position that he rightfully should have, God allowed him to have it back, which is a wonderful thing to know, because sometimes we get left field and we think it's us. But if we can put God back in his place, his proper place, and let him be preeminence back in our life, he can restore back and put you back on the road where he's taken you and start giving you what he wants you to have in the first place. But if you keep him out of the picture, you can end up losing and not having anything. So we need to know that God has the power to overturn anything that you're doing, whatever you're trying to set up, whatever you're trying to accomplish. If you take God out of the picture, you may end up losing everything, even though he had you on the path of giving you everything. So Daniel chapter 4, verse 4. It says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in peace and prosperity when one night I had a dream that greatly frightened me. I called in all the wise men of Babylon to tell me the meaning of my dream. But when they came in, the physicians, the astrologers, fortune tellers, and wizards, and I told them the dream, they couldn't interpret it. At last Daniel came in, the man I named Belshazzar, after my God, the man in whom is the spirit of the holy God, and I told him the dream. O Belshazzar, master of magicians, I said, I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you, and no mystery is too great for you to solve. Tell me what my dream means. I saw a very tall tree out in a field growing higher and higher into the sky. until it could be seen by everyone in all the world. Its leaves were fresh and green, and its branches were weighed down with fruit, enough for everyone to eat. Wild animals rested beneath its shade, and birds sheltered in the branches, and all the world was fed with it. Then as I lay there dreaming, I saw one of God's angels coming down from heaven. He shouted, cut down the tree, Luke, off its branches, shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Get the animals out from under it and the birds from off its branches, but leave its stump and its root in the ground. Band it with the chain of iron and brass, surrounded it by tender grass. Let the dew of heaven drench him, and let him eat grass with the wild animals. For 7 years let him have the mind of an animal instead of man. For this has been decreed by the watchers' demand and by the holy ones. The purpose of this decree is that all the world may understand that the Most High dominates the kingdom of the world and gives them to anyone he wants to, even the lowliest of men. And he's saying, right here, he says he wants him to know, and he wants everybody to know, that the kingdom of God is in control of everything in this world, he says, and he'll give it to whoever he wants. He said even to the lowliest, which means even to the one that is nothing and nobody, the one that's down, that thinks, he has the least of the least. God can take a kingdom that he has blessed somebody with, and he said he can take it from you and give it to somebody that is a nothing, a nobody, that nobody even knows. He says, I'm the most high. I am God of all, he said, and he'll give it to whoever he wants. And he says this is what he wants them to know. And he said he's going to take it from him for 7 years. But do you see when he said, cut it all down except the stump, because he wanted to leave that, because he was going to restore it to him, because he could have removed the stump too and he wouldn't have had anything, but he left something so he could grow back. Verse 18 says, O Belteshazzar, that was my dream. Now tell me what it means, for no one else can help me. All the wisest men of my kingdom have failed me. But you can tell me, for the Spirit of the Holy God is in you. Then Daniel sat there stunned and silent for an hour at a meaning of the dream. Finally the king said to him, don't be afraid to tell me what it means. Daniel replied, oh, that the event foreshadows in the dream would happen to your enemy, my Lord, and not to you. For the tree you saw growing so tall reaches high in the heavens for all the world to see, with its fresh green leaves loaded with fruit to all that eat, and wild animals living in the shade, with its branches full of birds. That tree, your majesty, is you. For you have grown strong and great. Your greatness reaches up to heaven, and your rule to the end of the earth. Then you saw God's angel coming down from heaven, saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump and the roots in the earth, surrounded by tender grass, banded with chain of iron and brass. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. For 7 years let him eat grass with the animals of the field. Your majesty, the Most High God has decreed that it will surely happen that your people will chase you from your palace, and you will live in the field like an animal, eating grass like a cow, your back wet with dew from heaven. For 7 years this will be your life, until you learn that the Most High God dominates the kingdom of men and gives power to anyone he chooses. But the stump of the root were left in the ground. This means that you will get your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. O King Nebuchadnezzar, listen to me. Stop sinning. Do what you know is right. Be merciful to the poor. Perhaps even God yet will spare you. But all these things happened to Nebuchadnezzar 12 months after this dream. He was strolling on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon, saying, I, by my own mighty power, have built this beautiful city as my royal residence, as the capital of my empire. While he was still speaking these words, a voice called down from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You will be forced out of the palace to live with the animals in the fields, to eat grass like the cows for 7 years, until you finally realize that God parcels out of the kingdom of men and gives them to anyone he chooses. The very same hour this prophecy was fulfilled, Nebuchadnezzar was chased from his palace and ate grass like the cows, and his body was wet with dew, and his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird claws. At the end of 7 years, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned, and I praised and worshiped the Most High God, honoring him for lives forever, who rules in everlasting his kingdom evermore. All the people of the earth are nothing when compared to him. He does whatever he thinks is best among the angels of heaven as well as here on earth. No one can stop him or challenge him, saying, "What do you mean by doing this thing?" When my mind returned to me, so did my honor and glory, and the kingdom, my counselors and officers came back to me, and I was reestablished as the head of my kingdom with even greater power and honor than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven, the judge of all, who every act is right and good. For he is able to take those who walk proudly and push them into the dust. And here is just letting you know somebody that was so powerful and so mighty, when they got to the point and thought it was because of them, when they got to the point that thought they didn't need God no more, they had it all under control, God stepped in and said, "You will know that I am God of heaven and I am God of earth, and I will take everything from you." Recognize and realize that no matter where you're going, no matter what you have in life, no matter how big it might be getting, no matter how big it may be, if you take God out of the picture, he can take your whole vision from you. We are absolutely nothing without God. We go out here a lot of times and we want things in life, and we want to get ahead in life, and we want to be successful, and we want to be prosperous, and we want everything for our family and everything for our marriage and everything for our kids, but we give God no glory and no praise in it. And then when God starts moving us ahead, we don't say, "I am here because of God." We begin to say, "I'm here because I got this knowledge from school. I'm here because I met this person. I'm here because they helped me to get here. I'm here because I have this, I have that." And we're giving God no glory in any of it. And God said, "You are only here because of what I've given you, because of me." And we need to start recognizing that God is in control. With or without you believing in him, with or without you accepting him, with or without you acknowledging him, God is still in control. And if we remove him from the picture, he has the power to remove everything from you. Because if we have a vision and we have a dream and we have something that we know God can bless us with, we need to recognize that it is God, it's not us. It is not us. That's why we always need to stay humble, and we always need to stay to the point that it's not me. When someone's saying, "Look at what you have," we need to say, "It's not me, it's because of God." We need to keep that humble spirit, because he can take it from us. And if we wake up one morning like him and lose our mind, it doesn't matter what we have. Because if you don't have a mind, you're not going to run a business. You're not going to be great as a mother or a father or anything else. You're not going to be anything, because without a mind, you can't do what you do. We only can be successful in what we do with the grace of God. So we need to keep him in his proper place. I think a lot of times, and you see it a lot of times when people, the further they get up, a lot of times they think it's all because of them. And you know, because you hear people talk, and when they're talking, it's me, me, me. Just like him, it says when he was out on the roof, he was saying, "Look what I did. Look what I accomplished. I have all of this because of me." And God says, "You're going to realize you have nothing. It's not because of you. It's because I blessed you. You have what you have because of me. You are wealthy because of me. You have everything you have because of me. You finished school because I gave you wisdom enough to be able to, so you could understand what the teachers were telling you. You have this because of you. You have wealth because of me." And see, we think it's us. That's why we can be bold to people and belittle people and down people and say, "Oh, you're not this, you're not that," because we think we're all this. We are nothing in ourselves. We are absolutely nothing. If we have any inkling of anything good in us, it's only the grace of God. It is only the grace of God. So we can never wake up, not one day in our life, and think we are something, because it's God. And so we need to start putting him back in his proper place, putting him back in his proper place. That's why I like the story so much of Joseph, because I see him and I see how he was a nothing and a nobody, and then God started exalting him and exalting him, exalting him, all the trials he went through. But he kept that humble and meek spirit. You know, he kept loving, and he kept so warm that even when he became everything and he ruled over everything, when his brothers came in to try to kill him, he still kept the humble spirit and said, I'm not going to harm you. I'm not going to hurt you. What you try to do bad to me, God turned it around for good, because he kept God in his proper place. He wasn't evil and hateful. It was like, get away from me. You're not having anything. You know, you did this, you do that. We do that a lot of time. We cut people out of our life we don't want to be a part of, because it's like, I don't need you. I don't need you. You're not doing anything for me. And maybe they're not. But we still can be humble, and we still can be loving, and we still can, you know, keep that humble spirit, because it's not us. Just like they have nothing, we walk around and we see people out on the street, we're only a day away or a minute away that we could be in the street. If God removed everything from us, you know, if he removed our family from us, our jobs from us, we do a wrong investment, you could be a day away from poverty, that have nothing. A lot of people that are living in the street, they ain't there because they done wrong things. Sometimes things just went wrong in their life. Sometimes they lost people. Sometimes they had husbands that passed away, that was the breadwinner of their household, and bills got too high. Not that they'd done anything wrong, or sickness came on their household. You know, a lot of times we look at people and say, oh, they're out there, they could be doing this. You don't know what hardship people have. Sometimes people play games. Everybody on the street ain't broke. Sometimes people are just trying to get money from you. But there are people out there sometimes that has hardship. And we don't know. If God don't tell us, we don't know. That's why you pray for everybody, but don't think we're anything, because we could be on that corner that next day, you know, with a handout, because we've lost everyone. You know, sometimes people lose a whole family at one time. A whole family. You know, they lose. Car crashes, different things happen. And then where are you if you lose people that your support, you know, that are around you? We don't know what's going to happen. What we do know, that if we hold on to God, we know we're okay. Whatever takes place in our life, we know we're okay. But we need to know God has the power. He rules. If you believe him, you don't believe him, he's still in control of your life. And then I just have a couple scriptures, just because that's just a story that I just think we need to meditate on, study it, read it. I think it's a powerful, powerful story of how God shows, I am totally in control of your life. I'm totally in control of your life. And then I have a couple scriptures in Proverbs. Proverbs, like I've told you before, is our wisdom, where you get a lot of wisdom at in the Bible. If you ever feel like you need some wisdom, read Proverbs. It has a lot of wisdom in it. But if we go to Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. 4 things in Proverbs, and then that's all. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. It says, a man's heart devises his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. In other words, we should make plans counting on God to direct us. We can make plans, but we need to believe God is going to direct us. That's what we're saying. When we go out and make plans, we're saying, God, this is what I'm doing, but I want you to order my steps. I want you to take control. I'm planning to do this, and I'm thinking I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do this, or I'm going to buy this, I'm going to purchase this. But nevertheless, Lord, I want you to take control. If I'm going out to do something and you're not in it, shut that door. I don't care how good it looks. I don't care how I think I want it. If you're not in control of it, if it's not what you want for me, make it so it doesn't happen. Because this is the plans I'm doing, but I want you to actually do it for me. And we need to know that no matter what we do, we want to make sure God is actually directing. And if we go to Proverbs 19:21. Proverbs 19:21. There are many devices in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord shall stand. And he's saying there's a lot of things that's going to come to you. A lot of things that are going to come to you. But the only thing that is going to stand is what God says. No matter what people say to you, no matter what you may think you know, no matter what direction you think you may go in, know that the only thing that is going to stand is what God says. Because the only thing that's going to stand through the test of time is God's word. So if he says it, that's what's going to stand. What comes to you may not. What somebody may say to you may not stand. But if God says it to you, you can stand on the fact that it's going to come to pass. That's why you have faith when you're stepping out. That's why when God gives you a vision, you just stand on it no matter what. No matter what anybody else says, you know, this is what God says. I don't care how hard it looks. I don't care how broke I am. I don't care if there's nobody else helping me. This is what God told me. This is what I'm standing on. This is what I'm believing on. And this is where I'm going to keep stepping in, because no matter what it looks like, in the end, I know victory is mine, because this is what God says. It says that's the only thing that's going to stand, is what God says. And then if we go to Proverbs chapter 20, 24. Man's going are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? And he says, man's going are of the Lord. How then can a man understand his own ways? He's saying, if what you're doing in your life is of God, if he's actually ordering your steps, he's directing you, he's control of what your life is, because he knows you. He says, then how are you going to know? You're not going to know. Only he knows. That's why you got to give it all to him. That's why you can't give him bits and pieces of your life. You got to give him your dreams, your visions. You got to give him your marriage, your kids, everything. You have to give it all to him. And then you have to trust him to believe that he knows what he's doing. You don't have to get all worried and upset when maybe your kids ain't doing what they should do. And we get all bent out of shape. When he says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he gets old, he won't depart. You got to believe and stand on that word. It's like, okay, because it also says foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. So then you got to also know that if it says foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but he says you train them up in the way it should go, then you have to believe, okay, they're going to do some things that you may not like, but you also know the word is in them, and God's going to get them back to where they need to be at. We don't have to stay up all night long and worry about this. It's like, oh, they're not doing right, they're not doing this, and they're not even looking at the Lord, they're not even following what God says, and oh my goodness, so like, God, they're yours. They're yours. Because in reality, if God can't do it, you can't do it anyways. You can stay up all night long, you can talk to them till you can't talk no more, you can come up with this and that and the other, but if God doesn't do it, it can't be done. If God can't change your marriage, then you can rest assured you can't change it either. If God can't change your kids, you can rest assured you can't do it either. But you can trust and believe that God can do it. Why can you trust that? Because he says there's nothing too hard for me. I don't care how crazy your marriage look, I can turn it around. I don't care how left field your child went, I can bring them back. Why? Because it's not too hard for God. Maybe too hard for you, but it's not too hard for God. That's why he says pray, pray, pray. Pray continuously. Never stop praying. And then that's why he says the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Why? Because there is things that happens when you pray. But then you got to be connected to the Lord. You out praying and you half-stepping more than your child's half-stepping. But you want them right, but you playing games. Only difference is that the world sees what they're doing. They don't see what you're doing because you're doing stuff behind closed doors. But yet you expect their life to turn around. When you're praying for someone and you're wanting change in their life, you need to be rooted and grounded in the Word. You need to be doing right within your life. And that's where, we need to give it to God, but we need to be doing right too. Knowing that God can do it because it's not too hard for God. And then one more scripture, if you go to Proverbs 21:30. Proverbs 21:30. There is no wisdom, nor understanding, nor counsel against the Lord. No human wisdom or understanding or plan can stand before what God's saying. I don't care what wisdom you get. I don't care what counsel you get. I don't care what plan you put in place. It's not going to stand against the plan that God has. I don't care who you know. I don't care what you know. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care what position they're in. It is not going to stand on the plan of what God says, which is the Word of God. Nothing is going to come against of what God's Word says. If God says you are blessed, you're blessed. Just like that song they sung today. You're blessed wherever you go. If you're in the city, you're in the field, wherever you are, you're blessed. Why? Because the blessing's in you. The anointing's in you. It don't matter where you go. God can bless you if you're connected and rooted and grounded in God. Because nothing can come against God. Nothing can come against His power. Who can fight against God? Who can come against you if God is on your side? Who is strong enough to knock God's down? Who is strong enough to say, this plan is not going to take place when God says this is the plan that's going to happen? Who can come against God's plan? So we need to trust him, believe in him, stand in him, and know when you're stepping out, making plans, when you're stepping out, going for visions and for dreams that he's given you, you better be walking along with God in control. In control, knowing, and when you're talking to people and when you're saying things, you better know out of each and every other word you need to say, but it's because of God. But it's because of God. This is only happening because of God. This is where I want to go if God's there. I want this if God is in control. And then when he starts blessing and he starts opening doors and people start exalting you and you start getting the fame and the glory and all you want, you need to say, but it's not me. It's the grace of God. It's not me. It's because of God. Because if you don't and you start taking the credit for yourself because I'm all this and I'm all that, recognize and realize just like he did to this king, he can do to you and says, you think you're all this, but I'm going to take it all from you. Praise God.
Options are few. I'm trying to pray, but where are you? I'm all churched out, hurt and abused. I can't fake what's left to do. Come on. Truth is I'm weak, no strength to fight, no tears to cry, even if I tried. But still my soul refuses to